Buzz. Arguing for the end of adult marijuana prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It is even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more in this edition of Drug War Data Mining. Welcome back, everyone. 22 and a half after the hour, and today we get this poll just released Sunday from NBC News, Marist University, entitled Race Shapes Americans' Attitudes About Decisions in Ferguson and Staten Island. Of course, they're referring to the grand jury's decisions to not indict police officers who killed unarmed men in Ferguson, Missouri, and Staten Island, New York. Michael Brown in Ferguson, Eric Garner in Staten Island. This has ignited a wave after wave of protests all across the country and a new insight into police use of force. Questions being asked that maybe some people hadn't thought about before. And this poll here from NBC Marist shows that there is a great divide in racial perceptions when it comes to our police. And this is not a surprise to most folks, but let's take a look at some of the numbers within the poll. First of all, 43% of Americans say the grand jury decisions in Ferguson and Staten Island have decreased their confidence in the legal system. That's among everyone. But if you look at it by race, twice the number of black people, twice the proportion of black people, 70% of black folks compared to 35% of white folks report decreased trust in the legal system. So twice as many black folks have looked at Ferguson and Staten Island, and that has decreased their trust in the legal system compared to white folks. And as far as law enforcement in the United States, 72% of Americans have a great deal or a fair amount of confidence in their local police force. 72%. But if we break that down by black and white, it's a 4-to-1 margin between white support for cops and black support for cops. 50% of white folks trust officers not to cross the line when dealing with a suspect and use too much force, whereas only 13% of African Americans are likely to trust an officer not to use excessive force. And when it comes to whether or not we perceive cops as treating white folks and black folks the same, that also shows a great racial divide. More than 8 in 10 African Americans, 82%, believe police have different standards based on race. 82% of black folks believe cops treat black folks differently. But a majority of white people, 51%, do not think that is true. 51% of white people believe that cops treat blacks and whites equally, but 82% of blacks don't agree. Also in the NBC Marist poll, 52% of whites express a great deal of confidence in their local police not to discriminate. Only 12% of African Americans agree with that sentiment. And more than 3 in 4 Americans, 77% of Americans, say that they have confidence that their local police will do a good job enforcing the law. But if we break that down, 55% of whites have great confidence compared to 17% of African Americans who have that confidence. The only issue on which blacks and whites agreed in this poll is in thinking that police officers should be required to wear video recorders to monitor their policing. More than 3 out of 4, regardless of race or age, believe that cops should have cameras on them. Now, when you take a look at and drill down in these polls, another thing that I find interesting, for example, on that first question, do you have a great deal of confidence that the police do a good job enforcing the law? Looking at any other breakdown, whether it's Democrat, Republican, you don't see quite as big a gap as you do in the racial gap. 55 to 17 in a great deal of support or a great deal of confidence in the police. There's a slight breakdown by Republican or Democrat. 73% of Republicans have a great deal of support, confidence in the police versus 35% of Democrats. Men and women are about equal. When it's broken down by age, the older you get, the more likely you are to believe cops or to have trust in cops. But from that point on, there's really no other demographic that seems to break one way or the other. When it comes to excessive force, similar breakdowns. Republicans are about twice as likely as Democrats to believe that cops won't use excessive force, and young people less likely than older people to believe cops won't use excessive force. Aside from that, though, income, region, and education don't seem to matter.